The pressure is on because the clock is ticking. We have 2 weeks exactly until the Land Rover show and the big unveiling of the Grizzly and Bear version. Can we call it version 2, version 3 maybe? We are getting the car prepared to drive 50 kilometers back to Ponstein Motors, where we have possibly an extra day mechanical work organised. I'm super excited because I'm going to be working hands-on with the chief mechanic over there, Craig, who's just such a knowledgeable Land Rover guy. Very excited to be able to work with him, learn from him.
We are stripping the radiator and the steering box off. Put new wheel bearings in, new fresh grease.
CV joint. What we're doing here is just doing all the bearings, and we're actually going to do the swivel housing seals at the back because we did have leaks on both of them. So yeah, there's a lot of work we're doing. Craig's over there working away on the power steering box. We're going to swap out ours, which had a leak, for a reconditioned one, and then ours will get reconditioned and put in another vehicle, recycling. Never did this job before. This is my second day. Steffi is back there editing away. I'm here in the workshop helping out where I can, which has actually been quite a lot, and learning from Craig, which is just an honour and a great experience to be able to hang out with him and learn a lot of these jobs which I've never done before. Has just been fantastic. We have been super busy, a lot of big jobs going. We're doing all of the wheel bearings. We found a stub axle that needed replacing. We've pulled out the old power steering box, put a new reconditioned one in. We've done the master cylinder. We are changing the transfer box, mounting rubbers. Craig is now giving me the full rebuild coaching lesson. It's been fantastic. So we're getting there now. I'm about to put the seal in. CV joint and the half shaft. I'll install all of that, and Craig said I go as far as putting the brake disc on, but no caliper. At that point, we will then set the preload. Reinstalling the intercooler and the radiator, which has been sent away. It's been flushed, cleaned out, serviced.
Brand new second hand.
Craig's taught me a new one. Brand new second hand. I'm running with it. I like it. Nice new viscous fan going on there. Yesterday, when I went to put the swivel housing back in place, unfortunately we got all of the bolts in, and on that one, only talking to spec, which is 65 Newton meters, it stripped the female thread in there. So we've got a guy out at the moment, Craig's friend. His name's Frankie. He is going to repair this thread, so I'm very interested to see how this takes place. Frankie has now repaired this one. He drilled it out with a 12mm and installed a 10mm helicoil, which is just a replacement thread. Very, very cool. So that's a 10mm thread, and we can now reassemble. Craig now is doing the preload on these swivels and showing me what it's all about. Now they get changed. There's a top bearing in there that he's inserting that locking pin into now, and a selection of shims comes with that in that box. And obviously the more shims that you put in there, the less pressure that's on the bearing underneath there, and the less shims, the more pressure, so increasing the resistance it takes to turn the steering wheel. Coming towards the end of day number 3, we have done a massive amount of work, and Steffi's been she's been away editing all day every day, so she's not been here to film, and I've been hands-on the entire time I've been here, so it's a little bit hard with greasy hands to grab the camera all the time and film. We've done the master cylinder, learned how to do that. That was really, really cool. We had an interesting afternoon trying to install one of the LOF clutch assist springs. That was very, very tricky to do, so but done now, and the clutch feels really, really nice. We've done the swivel seals on one side. Unfortunately, our swivel ball housing, one of them was pitted, had a lot of not corrosion, but little holes in it that was going to leak. Made the big call to get a genuine one. Very important to get a genuine one. Just ask us why. Kyrgyzstan snapped swivel ball housing. You guys might remember that one a few years back. So that's coming from Land Rover in Johannesburg. Overnight, we'll get that tomorrow, and that's like the last major thing to do. Day number 4, I have learned so much. It's been actually one of my most enjoyable workshop experiences. Thank you, Craig, and thank you, Ponstein. We are flushing the coolant system. Now, that had never been done. We have replaced some of the coolant hoses, so we had to dump the coolant anyway. So I'm filling with fresh water, flushing through, fill, flush, clean it right out until we get clean water coming out, and then we're gonna fill it up again with fresh coolant. What else am I doing today? We are still waiting on the swivel hub oil. I need to put new oil in because we dumped the oil. The reason we did that, we did put fresh oil in it when we first arrived in South Africa, but it's been sitting, not driving for 6 months now. So I figure why not just throw some fresh oil and a new oil filter. Now, every time you get the oil filter, it should come in the box a new O-ring. So you always want to put a new O-ring. And also good practice to put a brand new sump plug as well. Now, everything I do, try to anyway, I do to torque. So I've got my Haynes workshop manual, and in there are all the torque settings. This is my fancy little digital torque meter. It's a very handy little one. I used to carry a big torque wrench, but this thing's a fraction of the weight, and I like it. All right, so what I am going to do now is I'm going to prepare the housing of the hub here. So the bearing race are already installed both sides. They come new with a new set of bearings, so you always tap them out, replace the new ones. I've got the seal here. Now, very, very important to put these seals in the right way. Now, on these ones, it's quite cool because it tells you this way to stub axle. I'll grease up the bearings. Put one bearing in here, always using these bearings, the Timken bearings. We've never used any other brand, and these things are awesome. I'll grease them up, put it in, put the seal on top, flip it over, put the crush tube in the middle or spacer tube. The Puma Defenders have a spacer tube in the middle. Now, Craig has also shown me a nice little trick, well, a tip I should say. Rubber grease on the thing there. Not too much, but just a little smear of this rubber grease on the inside can help the seal. Wearing out, of course, because like this one, for example, will have rotating metal in it. I'm going to tap in the seal. So I put the seal in, double checking again that I've put it in the right way, because the thing is, once you put these seals in, generally they're very difficult to get them out again without damaging them. And usually, if you can, you should be replacing them every time you remove them anyway. Remembering the sealing face is the inside. So that's the bit we really don't want to damage. But I've got the old bearing race here, and just a little hammer. You don't need it. That's my little baby hammer from Japan, and just tapping nice and evenly all the way around. And it does actually, I just go all the way down till they bottom out, but it does actually tell you also fit to a depth of 4 millimeters. That looks about 4 millimeters to me. You can really feel the vibration and the difference in the sound. Now, I want to talk about this one, because when I have filmed myself doing wheel bearings, or talked about doing wheel bearings on our vehicle before, a Land Rover Defender Puma, which is a 2007 onwards, ours is a 2010, people have flipped out about me putting 200 Newton meters of torque. Actually should be a little bit more, but my torque gauge only goes to 200, so I just do 200 and a little bit. Saying, no, it's too much torque, it's too much torque. The Puma design is different to the older versions and other vehicles in the fact that it has one of these things, crush tube or a spacer, that goes in between the two bearings. So the bearings are not tightening up against the race, well, they are essentially, but they're also the internal faces of the two bearings are coming against this crush tube. So this crush tube goes in. I'm going to insert this now into the center there, and that there goes around your stub axle, and then the two bearings get tightened up against that. In the middle, you can see the spacer tube in there, in between the two bearings. I will now wrap that up in a nice clean rag, put it to the side. My next job now, I'm gonna pull this apart. I'll pull the pin out from the top here, remove this ball out. There's a solid pin in the bottom there. I'll show you guys in a minute. Pull this apart, very gently remove the bearing out of there because we are gonna have to reuse them. We don't have a spare of those ones. So I pulled the top swivel pin there, and that one has a teeny tiny low ring on it as well, so you got to be super careful of that. This ball has a seal in it. We got a new seal because obviously, like I mentioned before, removing that out, chances are we're going to damage it. It goes in pretty tight, that one. Now as you take this out, you got to be very, very careful because there's a teeny tiny little bearing there and a little bit of a heavier duty one on the bottom side there, and we're going to have to reuse them. So I'll pull that out, put it to the side over here. I'm going to take those bearings out, need to be reused. Well, that one's been left behind on the pin there. You can see that. That's a little bit heavier duty. That's the bottom one. That's the two little bearing races for the swivel housing removed and ready to be reused. I managed to get them out without doing any damage, which is good. Stellenbosch at the Land Rover dealership. The swivel ball, the housing that we needed, arrived even earlier than we could have expected, all the way from Johannesburg overnight. Let's go get the swivel ball. I've come from Craig at Ponstein Motors. Thank you very much, sir. That is absolutely fantastic. You've saved the day. I'm on a very tight schedule. Ah, there we go. We had one snap on us once, straight in half there, because it was non-genuine.
I've got the same thing at home.
Ah, yeah?
But I'm eating my dessert from it.
Actually makes that quite, makes a perfect bowl.
It's just a little bit heavy.
We came back with that from Stellenbosch. Craig's going to put it all together now. It does obviously take a rubber seal in there, but just to give yourself a little bit better chance of things staying in there, the oil or one-shot grease or whatever you choose to use, Craig puts just a little smear of sealant there as well. Putting that on nice and gently, and that one holds everything in. These gasket or flange, I guess, that pulls the rubber down and seals against the ball can only go on one way. The gasket itself has two cutouts on it, and if you look, you can actually see the cutout on the housing itself. So that's the little trick there.
Alright.
A little dot because I have to have a license here in South Africa, so
I need you to talk two things for me, please. This nut and that side's nut.
this bar, or a pry bar we call them, or a pinch bar, is called a guala, but only in Cape Town, yeah?
Yeah.
That'll do, just a nip.
Setting the swivel pin preload. So it should be between 2 to 4 pulling kilograms on the swivel pin preload bearing.
Takes the shims out. More shims means less preload, and less shims means more preload.
Sometimes you end up with 2 shims,
Yep.
sometimes you end up with all the shims on them.
Just depends.
Yeah. Perfect. Now it's just installing everything and then getting the caliper back on.
Great, working into his lunch break here.
Grease and mixed it with some oil to make it more runny, if we can call it. and we call it one-shot grease, to lubricate the CV joint. Inside there is the CV joint that sits inside the CV joint housing and swivel pin ball.
Yeah, I don't know, it must be specific to these.
We hope you enjoyed this little bonus video. Don't miss out next week the episode you all have been waiting for, the big reveal of Grizzly and Bear finally completed. See you next time. Until then, take care. Bye bye.